Motion to allow Councilmember Fridovich to participate by Zoom.
I move approval for Councilmember Michael Fridovich to attend by Zoom.
Thank you so much. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing no opposition as well, motion passes unanimously. I'd also like to have us all introduce ourselves for those that are watching via Zoom. To my left, we'll start with Commissioner Flowers.
Good morning, Renee Flowers, Pinellas County Commissioner, District 7.
Good morning, Deborah Fix Sanders, St. Petersburg City Council, District 5.
And good morning, all. Vince Cox, appointed by the Pinellas County Commission.
And as I said, I am Josh Schulman from the city of St. Petersburg. We will move into the public comment section. The public may call to make comments instead of in person. The number is, as it is on the screen, 415-655-0002, meeting ID 180-091-9866. Clarissa, are there any individuals in the lobby for public comment?
There are no public comments from the lobby.
And Julie, is there anyone online for public comment?
No, there is no one on the phone for public comment.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We will move forward with our first and only action item, the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Move approval of the minutes from June 16, 2021.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Second.
Fantastic. We have a motion and actually 2 seconds, but we'll take the one from Commissioner Cox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously, and we're going to move right into the first information item, the Transit Development Plan Annual Progress Report with Heather Sobush. Heather, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning. Hold on one second. Okay, so this is an information item to share our Transit Development Plan Annual Progress Report with you. Next slide, please. The Transit Development Plan, which I will refer to as the TDP, serves as PSTA's 10-year vision. It includes an implementation plan based on our sustainable strategic plan and also provides the foundation for the transit elements of other plans, including Ford Pinellas's long-range transportation plan and the TBARTA master plan. Finally, it identifies projects for inclusion in our legislative agenda, the Forward Pinellas priority list, and the regional priority list. Next slide, please. So the Florida Department of Transportation requires a major update every 5 years, and we time that with the development of the long-range transportation plan so that our plans are aligned. It was last adopted in 2020, right around the time the pandemic hit. A progress report is required in subsequent years just to document progress, update the implementation and financial components, and add any new projects as appropriate. And this progress report does not have to be approved by the board, but the major update does. Next slide, please. So in addition to aligning the TDP with the long-range transportation plan, we've also made sure this progress report reflects service-related projects included in our our sustainable strategic plan that we recently developed. Next slide, please. So the first of the projects we've highlighted in our progress report is, of course, our Sunrunner Bus Rapid Transit, currently under construction. We've also included progress on the related Sunrunner Rising TOD project. Next slide, please. The progress report also talks about all we've done in terms of all we've done to advance projects through partnerships with other agencies. So this includes our ongoing Jolly Trolley partnership, including the Spring Break partnership that we'll hopefully be bringing back this spring. It also includes the AVA demonstration, which was completed in St. Petersburg and currently on hold in Dunedin. Our partnership with the Clearwater Ferry to develop a future service plan, as well as our partnership with the St. Pete Downtown Partnership to help promote PSTA services through the car-free St. Pete effort. Next slide. We've also made great strides this past year in transforming from being a bus-only agency to a full mobility management provider. So this includes our ongoing partnership with Transit App, recent implementation of Flamingo Fares, and a revamping of our paratransit services by transitioning from Care Ride to First Transit, offering new services to paratransit customers and applicants, and acquiring a new software to facilitate more efficient delivery of services. Next slide. Other projects documented in the annual progress report include our growing electric bus fleet that we're very proud of, plans for solar and battery storage, progress made on the Clearwater Multimodal Transit Center, the Bus on Shoulders pilot, and the development of a new shelter deployment plan. So while this presentation is focused on projects we have been making progress on, the TDP annual progress report also includes projects from update that speak to our vision and documents the need for additional funding to implement many of those projects that are in our longer term vision. So that concludes my presentation, and as such, I'll turn it back to the chair for any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? No? All right, Heather, I would like to just add that while it's just a one-year progress report, I think that update could have probably been 3 years of activity that we've made progress on,
Yes.
especially given the environment in which we were operating. So I think we're required to present our progress, but I think we should also be very proud of that progress that's been made. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Our second informational item will be our fiscal year 22 budget update with CFO Debbie Leas. But I'm
Thank you very,
Hey, Debbie, can I just?
thank you very much, Chair.
Debbie, can we
Next
hold
slide,
on?
please.
Hey, Debbie? Sorry
Yes, sir.
for the train wreck.
Brad wanted to jump in and
Can I introduce
Steal
you or introduce your presentation?
You
Okay,
sure may.
okay. Good morning, everybody. What I wanted to say about the budget presentation that Debbie is about to get is, and maybe you've heard this, I think it's been maybe mentioned, maybe I've heard it in some county commission meetings, and then I've heard it at different meetings I've attended, that, as you know, the coronavirus relief, the CARES Act monies that have come from the federal government, PSBA, as well as every transit system in the United States has gotten, we're very grateful for quite a bit of funding from Congress over the last year during the pandemic. And there's questions, well, are we rolling in cash? Do we need any more money, et cetera? And we're grateful for it. But this presentation that Debbie's about to present is sort of a response to that the funding is great, but it is one-time funding that we're getting to help us get through the pandemic. And our budget's looking okay, but the moral of the story is it is one-time funding and that's it. So I just wanted to kind of introduce Debbie with that beautiful picture. Go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you, Brad, for the Debbie Downer introduction.
It was not downer.
So good morning. Well, anyway, good morning, everyone. And today's information item is about the updates regarding the fiscal 22 budget. Over the course of the summer, since we last presented the draft in June, the finance team has been meeting with all the directors and chiefs, getting any major updates and updating the budget. So we're just about where we're putting pencils down, and we'll be presenting in September. But today I wanted to go over some key points. Next slide, please. At the last committee meeting we had before this, at the Finance Committee meeting, we presented the SEIU contract negotiation settlement. It really is a fantastic agreement between both parties. I said I would come back to this committee and explain how is it impacting our budget. It's negligible. Part of the reason for that is when we go into negotiations, even though the union always comes out with some really large percentage, I want a 25% increase in pay, it's an open book test. And what I mean by that is when I come to the board in the springtime with our key assumptions, we put out there exactly what we've got budgeted. And that way, and I always bring it back to them and say, here's the percents that we're looking at. Our team puts together what the dollar amounts are so that everybody knows what the pot of funds is. And with that, we're able to work to come up with what works for everybody on both sides and come in as close to budget as humanly possible. And we've done that very successfully. The board will get to hear, at the board meeting, this team will get to hear what a great contract it is. Everybody will have a starting wage of at least $15 an hour with a lot of great upgrades on both sides for both teams. Next slide. So one of the areas that has changed is the fuel. And we have seen the fuel costs increasing. What I'm doing is increasing it to about $2.10. And when I look to the futures market right now, I'm looking at a futures average of more around $2.02, but it's been fluctuating so wildly that I don't want to jinx myself. If it changes, because we're going to be entering into discussions on locking in fuel, one of the things I like to do every year is lock in about 2/3 of the fuel that we purchase. And by doing so, we take away a lot of risk, but then we leave 1/3 that I can either further lock in or that we can leave floating to the marketplace if the marketplace drops. And we've seen that, of course, this year in an opposite way. Many years the marketplace has gone down. This year the marketplace has gone up, but yet we are still staying under budget. And this is one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to our electric buses and all the projects that we have around the infrastructure related to that. The impact on this is a little over $500,000. Next slide. So we have had at PSCA a great start to our Flamingo project of tapping on or using your app to get on the bus. We've had our outreach teams, community outreach teams out and about. And so we are seeing quite a great success with this. What I would say though, and I've been around since the project started, is it's been evolving. We started out with 7 different transit agencies participating, and we are now down to 4. The 4 is HART, PSTA, Pasco, and Hernando. And as we are learning as we go through this, we're finding that there are things that either we want or need that are costing more money. And we are currently working with HART. They are the project owner for the region. And of course, we've offered the help of our procurement director, Al, which is our secret weapon, to help them out on any negotiations that we have for the costs for the back office piece. So, but we're very excited about that to move forward. And with that, I'd say let's go to the next slide. And on a less positive note, PSTA is losing about $1.9 million that over a period of years, couple-year period, that we had applied for with CTD. And with the elimination of the MCORS funding, the CTD Innovation and Service Development Grant is going away. This helps to fund our TV late shift, which we feel is extremely essential. So what I've done is I've conservatively budgeted about $500,000 to keep the program going. I would say this past year or two, it's come in at around $450,000. But I think as the economy gets back to work and everyone is getting back to work, this is extremely important to keep in place. Next slide. So all these different, basically the fuels, the loss of some revenue, some increased costs, we're increasing our operating expense budget to about $1.6 million to $98 million, which is why we're very grateful for the CARES Act, CRISA, and ARP funds. Next slide. So we are using this money to pay for operations. We're putting it towards our salaries. We're putting it towards our COVID-19 supplies. We're making up for lost revenues. It's going for things such as fuel. And it really has been a great way to ensure that PSTA has not laid off or furloughed any employees during this pandemic, is provided COVID-19 pay for those who have been ill, or had to take care of family members who were. We've been able to purchase computer hardware and software so that the administrative staff can work remotely and have greater protection against the virus. We've also enhanced our security and our cleaning at all of our facilities. So this money has gone towards that. And I think the other thing that's important to note is PSTA has not had any permanent reduction in our services as a result of having all of this money. So it has gone quickly, and we will be spending it by the end of next year, possibly in the beginning of 23, but I highly doubt it. So we will be using this, and it's also important to note, I want to use this quickly. There has been discussion that at the federal level, that some of this infrastructure funding that we're hearing about may be coming from sweeping money that is unspent as it relates to both all three of these recovery relief funding sources. As we said, this is one-time funds. We will start seeing an operating deficit in fiscal 23. So we want to be conscious of what we do going forward. And I believe I have one other slide coming up. Next slide, thank you. And so really we're at a point where we're putting the final tweaks on the budget. We've got pencils down, and as soon as I say pencils down, you have to believe there's going to be a flurry of, oh, we need to change this a little bit here and a little bit there. So we are working on that over the next week or so, and we're getting ready for our public hearings that are coming up September 15th and 29th, as well as the board adoption on the 29th. I will make sure that all board members have a draft of the budget before we ever get to these public hearings for your review. You can always reach out for comments and questions. And with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Go ahead, hit your button there.
Good morning, and nice to meet you, and thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I just have a few questions. For the CARES Act funding, it is one-time funding, but I did notice that they have salaries in there. So, and I agree with trying to expend those dollars. But for the salary amount, is that the way that you all have looked at it or calculated it, is that something that we will be able to maintain out of our normal budget? Because once these funds go, that sets the new parameters for where we are with salary structure. So we'll be okay in making any adjustments going forward?
Yes, I believe so, and I think Debbie has a good answer, yeah.
Yes, the answer is definitely yes. And the purpose of these funds, Commissioner, is essentially for operations. Mm-hmm. It is to help us through, this pandemic, and we will be able to sustain it. That's one of the reasons we do forecasts going forward, be able to see where do we have issues, what can we do if we have them, to start thinking well in advance of that. And the CARES Act itself is the only one of the three that allows for use of the funds for capital. And most agencies are not using for capital. Those that are using it to buy buses. And part of that was to be able to spread people out with additional buses. We limited the number of people on the buses that we currently have. And it managed to work out extremely well for us. So that we were able to take care of things and be prepared for the future.
Okay. And then just a little update for the $1.3 trillion budget package that encompasses transportation as well. Super kudos to the federal government for the Senate passing their version, and now the House has their little battle on their hands, which I'm hoping that they'll be able to move that forward. But one of the things that we've consistently heard, and I know that we are moving in that direction, I don't think we'll have any problem, is making sure that there are sustainability and resiliency efforts within any application structure as well as equity. And I think that even when I looked at our last report from T-BARTA looking at the DBE numbers that T-BARTA has, and then the DBE numbers that PSTA has, and how we've exceeded those numbers, I think we will be okay in those equity ranges. But, anything else that we could think of as well, where we could intertwine sustainability and resiliency, because even though most people think of sustainability and resiliency in an environmental or, electric and whatnot, I believe that sustainable part also is how are you retaining, staff?
Right,
Or
yeah.
retaining your assets, the human assets. And so I've not, heard anyone really address that and how they want to put together programs or ask for dollars, but I would be very interested to see how we could maybe have that thought process going forward, that, resiliency and sustainability is not just for the hard materialistic things, but also what we're doing for our internal structures and how we move that forward, so. But thank you so very much for, the budgetary report. It's always good to know when you're not in the red.
All right,
And certainly,
go ahead.
Brad, did you want to weigh in?
Oh, I know, go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, I was just going to say, our budget includes elements of diversity of inclusion. It's very important to us. We have a diversity and inclusion council that we're working on right now and coming up with our mission. We've got some programs that are going on. We also have programs for, as well, we've heard in some of the other committees today, for education for our employees as well. We've taken a look through a salary study at our administrative staff so that we make sure that we're paying market rates for that, for retention. And I think our average, on the administrative side, our average length of time for a tenure is about 10 years, which is very good in a market that people are changing every couple of years. But your point is extremely well taken, and I will try to address that when I address the board in September and dive into it a little bit more.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Fig Sanders, you had,
Yes, good morning and thank you. I have a couple of questions and so let me read my own handwriting. So when I looked at the slide and I saw that we jumped from 1.6 to $97 million, and since we're finding out that the American Rescue Funds was a one-time deal, we did not know this time last year that we were going to have access to those dollars. Those dollars we had already incorporated in our budget. So where are those dollars being held now?
I'm not sure I quite understand, but the $1.6 million increase is going to be funded out of the revenues that we're bringing in today, which includes the CARES Act, some of which will be hopefully negotiated down. And part of it, we also have reserves here at PSTA should we need them. Currently, we're not having to use any reserves to be able to sustain ourselves.
So maybe I need to re-ask my question. So when it says it increased from $1.6 million to $97 million, basically you're saying we're just seeing a $1.6 million increase, getting
Yes,
us to
ma'am.
98. Okay, so that wasn't clear, so I just wanted.
it's a lot less than,
It's a whole lot less than $97 million, so that's why I wanted to make
I
sure.
was wondering, okay, no,
Yeah,
all
you know,
right, we will
uh-huh.
reword that slide.
Yeah, I looked at that and I was like,
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm not translating that correctly. And then I do know, I like your statement where you're saying that we need, more electric buses. And I do remember us having, those conversations in board meeting in regards to purchasing additional dollars, writing grants for those dollars. And if we're trying to get there faster, would that not have been a consideration for purchases as well? In acquiring more electric buses with these dollars?
Actually, like I said, these dollars, the only one that would have been able to have been used for any capital would have been the CARES Act money, which we basically already spent down for salaries, et cetera, during COVID. But we are working towards more electric buses. Matter of fact, we get formula funds and then we apply for discretionary grant funds. So formula funds come to us every year. And matter of fact, Henry Lukasik, who is our director of maintenance, myself and grants manager met yesterday as we are looking forward and saying, let's just assume we don't get any discretionary funds going forward. How can we make this work? So we are going to be including electric buses in each of the years going forward. We also, at the same time, will be working on infrastructure to support that, as far as whether it's the charging, the battery storage, solar system, et cetera. so that we are not impacted by the number of electric buses that we have. And it's certainly going to help us on the maintenance cost side. Having said that, we are looking for discretionary funding for electric buses, for the electric infrastructure, the VW settlement money, anything that we can to help increase that at a more rapid rate. So I'm very excited about where the future is going with all of this. I really am.
Okay, thank you so much for the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Cox?
Thank you, Josh. This may go to Henry, this question, or perhaps Brad. Are we operating all 8 buses now daily, all of our electric buses?
We are,
Okay,
yes,
good.
all 6. We have 6 right now.
That's what I meant. I was hoping for 8.
2 are on the way. 2
Okay,
more on the
well,
way.
that's what I was thinking. But good. We're running them and we're charging them and everything's good.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Debbie, I wanted to thank you for your presentation, and I also wanted to echo the points made by Commissioner Flowers regarding sustainability and resiliency. And I'm pleased, though, as we look around, that conversation is getting past the environmental, which is where it started, and getting into business continuity, technology, resiliency, community, just encompassing a much larger scape. I also was very pleased, Debbie, that you shared some information about the recently passed infrastructure budget, or the infrastructure spending plan, and how that may impact prior pots of money as a potential risk or opportunity. I'm hoping that our legislative committee is jumping on what's in that bill with our advocates up in DC as to what opportunities may exist, so that we can be ready in line. Especially as that may relate to things like buses and other infrastructure improvements. And on a less serious note, just wanted to point out, I love the slide that said to join the flock for the flamingo fairs. But technically, a group of flamingos is a flamboyance, not a flock.
Oh my.
So,
Oh, it is? Oh.
just in case anybody, random trivia for today's meeting, you're welcome. So, with that, I don't see any additional questions. Brad, do you have any comments on the budget?
Oh, well, I actually had a question for Commissioner Flowers. I don't know if she would know this, but the points you made are very well taken about the sustainability extending beyond environmental. And I think the Finance Committee had a pretty detailed presentation, and you'll hear it at the board meeting, about investing in our employees with our new union contract, which Debbie mentioned. But that's exactly right. I mean, for us to be competitive and make sure we provide really strong wages for all of our frontline employees, that's a major step forward. I had a question. I don't know if you know this, Commissioner Flowers, but one thing we're also watching, which was on I think it was on Heather's presentation, about the ferry. And I think perhaps that the county commission yesterday maybe included some funding for the Clearwater Ferry. I'm not sure if they did or not, but that's one thing that we might, that's also we're monitoring to see what's going on with the Clearwater Ferry. Is that we're trying to build a partnership between Dunedin, City of Clearwater, Pinellas County, and PSTA, kind of like we do with the Jolly Trolley, to fund the Clearwater Ferry in the future. And we would include some funds, some operating funds in our budget once that coalition all gets together. And so I think I heard that there might be some discussion yesterday at the county meeting, but I'm not sure if that happened or not.
I'm sorry. I know that I've spoken with the mayor of the city of St. Petersburg, and there was some conversation between he and Barry regarding the county support funding of the ferry in St. Petersburg, but that wasn't on our agenda.
Okay.
On yesterday, and, excuse me, I'm sorry. And we didn't discuss any funding for the Clearwater Ferry on yesterday, and I was just going through my notes just to make sure I'm not telling you wrong.
Okay.
But I do know that one of the of course, if you're helping one, you should help the other.
Yeah.
Who services, which direction are you servicing? And I do know that the fare for the city of St. Petersburg has really taken off as it relates to ridership and service between, Tampa, Hillsborough, and coming back to downtown St. Petersburg. So I know that we'll probably be having that discussion because, like I said, I had a chance to talk to the mayor of the city of St. Petersburg about the funding, because the county currently provides support, financial
Yes.
support for that one.
And-
And so I know there's gonna be a conversation about providing support also. And then, of course, our desire to venture into those waters, PSTA's desire to venture into those waters with a electric boat, so.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other business? Commissioner Cox?
Thank you, Commissioner. COVID, not a nice subject, but we're on fire. Our state is essentially on fire right now, and just wondered the status of our bus service right now. Do we have any active cases? Are we, taking any steps to perhaps combat this so we don't get more cases? I know Commissioner Schulman mentioned it last month, and I just wondered where we're at. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Cox. That's certainly on top of our mind. One, just to reiterate, we, like all transportation, are still under the mask requirement for all of our riders, employees, et cetera. You might have noticed that we have fewer other staff attending. We've kind of gone back to more virtual meetings with the administrative staff. For the employees, yes, we are seeing, we went a glorious, about 3 or 4 weeks with no cases. We had no cases, and then I got a report on Monday that I think we had something like 26 of our employees out, and 13 of which had tested positive, and then none in the hospital, thankfully, and then 13 that were in contact or something, for some other COVID-related reason out. And then that includes, no, I think in addition, there's a few of our contractors at First Transit, at Jolly Trolley, et cetera. For the first time, I think, just in the last couple of days, we've seen maybe a little bit of a uptick in our maintenance group and Henry's group, which is concerning. So we are looking at ways in which we can, again, make sure that that all of our activities are separated as much as we can make that. Looking then to see what provisions we might put back into place on the buses. Since July 5th, when we reinstituted fares, ridership has dropped, and so the capacity problems are not as prevalent just in the last month. But now that school started today, our ridership goes back up with school, and so we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of weeks as far as our bus service goes.
Because we certainly don't want to put more at risk, as we're, finding out right now it's happening, and now
Yeah.
we don't want children to get sick either. So that being said, keep us updated, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And actually, Brad, along those same lines, what do we do with the Department of Health as far as contact tracing? Have they reached out during this entire time or currently with, when they become aware of someone who is positive?
And I don't believe that's the case. We've had some really good interaction with the Department of Health and Dr. Cho's office. He's been great to help us with testing and vaccination. We had a vaccination events here on site. That was all through his office. But as far as reporting our tests or contact tracing, we do all that in-house. I mean, we do a fairly extensive job, thanks to our HR department and safety folks. They have done they do a really thorough job of contact, best job we possibly can, but that's all internal. I mean, I would say the other thing that we're trying to work with incrementally is the possibility of getting more vaccines into our employees, as much as we can. I think what we're gonna start with is a survey of the 800 PSDA employees and contracted employees to just find out, are we at the same rate as Pinellas County is at large, or are we in some different situation? Because we don't know. We don't know which one of our employees are vaccinated and which ones are not. And so we're gonna try to get that survey done first, see where we're at, and then maybe move on from there with some kind of new vaccination process.
When we have a driver that tests positive, do we put a notification on that route so that people who may be taking that route on a regular basis are aware that?
We did that initially during the pandemic. We no longer do that. Yeah, we do a notification to our own employees, and then we do contact tracing if they interacted or were at like a at a transit center with other employees on that, but not to the riders that might have driven that route. It's probably too complicated because they all drive different routes.
I understand, but if a driver was driving a particular route on a particular day, we know, people tend to take the same routes over and over again, even though the drivers and the buses themselves change. So it may be worthwhile, given the spread of the Delta variant, to let riders know that there may have been a potential exposure to help with that, their own personal contact tracing. And I also don't know if it's possible, or even proper, but with Flamingo fares, we have a sense as to who's riding when, for people that are swiping, and if that information is available to then the Department of Health, to then make sure that anyone who has a potential exposure is being notified, because we would hate for that incidental exposure to then lead to other exposures down the line. So the more information, the better. And I realize it's a tricky situation with HIPAA and circumstances, so I don't say I have the answers, I'm just asking more questions.
As long as you don't say the person's name and identifier and whatnot, but just say there was an exposure. If you rode Route 72, between these dates, there was a potential exposure, please, if you're feeling the symptoms, please go and be tested, or to assure yourself, please go and be tested. I kind of like that because, it helps us too. I mean, maybe somebody got on and gave it to the child. We still have that plastic.
The shield, safety shield, yeah.
So hopefully that will help, because with people getting in, they have that direct spray or whatever, and wearing your mask when you're on. But, again, anything that's human-made, it's an opportunity for error. I would run that language through legal, just to make sure, if you decide to do that, just to make sure that all is well with the legal piece of it. But I would think that, some form of measure, and then see if there's a cost and how much that cost would be. If it's us putting it on our website, if it's, when the health department puts it on their website, so it goes out in that report that they provide when we have our calls.
Or even just posting a flyer on that
On the
route
bus.
the next time it's going, so that people who are
On
getting
that
on the
bus.
bus say, this is what happened, and you know what happened at that particular route.
Yeah, I would just probably run it through legal, just to double check all of that, make sure.
Commissioner Fix Sanders?
I'm sorry.
So I was going to, in response to what you were saying, when we dealt with the protection of drivers and we put up the glass and we, just by their mere isolation from the general ridership, I would see a driver getting COVID from a passenger versus a passenger getting COVID from the driver. So before I implement that spirit of worry and fear, if it were a constant rider that we know is COVID positive, then I can see going to that extent. But the driver itself, unless they have hand-to-hand constant contact with all the riders, I'm looking at that percentage being smaller, and especially now with the lack of symptoms that a lot of the breakthrough cases are having. So my question is not about the driver and contact tracing for the driver, but what is the routine cleanliness throughout the route? You know, first thing came to my mind is like microbrand, and you know, is there a cleaning schedule? Is it cleaned one time a day? Is cleaned the night when they come in from the end of the route, but there's no more cleaning throughout the day? That's where the contact tracing is going to be a nightmare to follow, especially if there's no cleaning routine throughout the day. So it's multifaceted, but the first thing came to my mind before we worry about a driver infecting riders is riders infecting other riders. Because the driver, like I said, is secluded in their own, you know, little world. They don't have direct contact. They're wearing their mask. But what is the contact, that possibility of ridership? And if you know normal riders, that will be the message that we put out. If we find out a normal rider has COVID-19, we definitely would like to share that. But then what is the cleaning schedule? That's the part, the role we need to play on that. What is the cleaning schedule for?
And those are good, those are really good points, and it's exactly what we found. Now, I recognize now with the Delta variant, things are completely different. But prior to the Delta variant, we did not see, because just as you said, a bus operator now with the safety shield in place is relatively isolated. And they do have the door open constantly, and there's airflow in there. We weren't seeing individual bus operators that were just driving their bus with passengers getting COVID substantially. They were either getting positive coronavirus when they were outside of work with their own families or in the outside times, or if they clustered together like at a shift change or other activities. And so we're constantly trying to identify places where employees might gather together and try to limit that. Because once they get out on their bus and they close the little thing, and they're not too bad as far as things go. So I think you're exactly right. But now with the Delta variant, we're just going to have to see. I mean, we are seeing some positive cases, the vast majority of which, at least from what we understand, are not vaccinated. We do have a few breakthrough cases as well amongst bus drivers. We've had, I think, 2 situations in the last couple of weeks. You know, we have a lot of husband and wife teams of drivers, and of course, when one gets it, then the other one gets it, and then that's 2 down. So, yeah, we're looking for all possible solutions on how to make it through.
But I think that cleaning schedule throughout the day, even if
And
it's a
yes.
Lysol spray during periodic breaks.
Yeah, I wanted to say that. We did more than double our cleaning activities at the beginning of the pandemic, and we've kept that going. We kept that going even now.
Thank you.
Okay, real quick. And one thing we have to remember, that those that are particularly vulnerable are our paratransit drivers, simply because they're in a small vehicle, number one. Number two, they do multi-load as well. And I know with First Transit, who is now our non-ambulatory, but they do take ambulatory people as well. They do cleaning every night now. That vehicle is cleaned, disinfected, and ready to roll for that driver in the morning. That wasn't happening before, but we didn't hit my elbow before. We didn't have COVID like we do now, let me put it that way, with the other provider. And again, I'm not sure with our contracted providers who are Bay Area Metro and USERV.
Yeah.
And actually, they're smaller vehicles. They're actually sedans. They're not a large van. They're very contained. And
It is a key issue, and as you know, that they have a lot more interaction, like very close contact. Sometimes they're helping the person to their house or whatever with the riders than our regular bus drivers do.
Right.
And we just got our first notification of a positive case of a First Transit driver.
we got an email that there was a it was either Care Right employee or First Transit employee that was very ill and in the hospital. That was about a month ago or so.
I think we learned that we learned in July that back in June, a Care Ride employee was in the intensive care unit at a hospital, very seriously ill. I'll find out if we have any report on that.
I'm not meaning to mention it right here, but,
Yeah.
it just came to my mind. But anyway, we have to, that's very important, I think, that we reach out to our subs, which is Metro
Yeah.
and User, and make sure that they're doing everything in their realm to try to stay safe. Thank you.
On a positive note, the Looper in St. Petersburg, now, I think they only have 7 employees, but Eric Carlson, the head of the Looper, reported that 6 out of 7 of his employees are all vaccinated. All but 1, yeah. I don't think PSDA and First Transit have the same percentage, so.
Thank you, and I appreciate the conversation around this issue. My main goal is to make sure that we're proactive with our communication and we're partnering with our community to help people make good decisions for themselves and keep them aware of what's going on in their own spheres. And for me also, I realize that the bus driver is segregated, but they also serve as a kind of a canary in the coal mine for the bus route itself. So,
True.
you know, if they're positive, then there's a good chance other people were on that same route. If they're not, it's less likely. So, because they're there the entire time. But there's no one right answer. It's just about making sure that we're a partner in health with our community members and helping them make good decisions. Is there other business? All right. Well, seeing none, I appreciate everyone's attendance and involvement. And our next meeting is September 15th at 10:30, unless the Finance Committee goes long. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Nice socks, Brad.
Yeah, these are my Gettysburg College socks.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, Charlie. I'm giving these
So,
college $40,000.
Friday, I just had physical therapy at 1 o'clock. It's an hour, it's only an hour.
For the record, James offered the union a virtual way to vote, so they wouldn't have to use all his pictures. They
The only thing I have for Friday
will
evening
vote
was,
with